Alrighty, so this is going to be part 5 of the Twilight of the Republic spoiler review. This is a pretty exciting week. There's a couple of new leaders that I really like, a lot of powerful cards, so this is going to be cool. Before I get going, please click that subscribe button, it helps out a ton, and if you want some more deep dive content, come check out my Patreon. Going to be starting to feature some like Twilight of the Republic testing early brews in the coming days. Alright, so first new leader is Quinn Voss. This is a 5-cost deploy. He's a cunning heroism leader. He's a 3/7 when he deploys. His leader ability says, when you play a unit, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, deal 1 damage to an enemy unit that costs the same as the played unit. And then his ability, once he flips, of course he's a 3/7. It says when you play a unit, you may deal 1 damage to an enemy unit that costs the same or less than the played unit. So that restriction gets a little easier, right? He is a Force Jedi Republic, so very relevant traits. So I think this guy is pretty good. I think for anyone who's played Cad Bane with Tarkin Town knows how good that early Tarkin Town enabling is. It really gets you going, lets you get ahead on board really early. I think that's going to be the first place I'd look to messing with this leader, just because of how powerful being able to like ping something, kill it early, and just be ahead on board from the first or second turn of the game. In addition to that, he has Force on a very, very sturdy body, 3/7, plus he's a 5-cost deploy, so I think he makes for very good at Force enabling, similar to the way Chirrut enabled Force cards very easily, being a 3/5 deploy that was basically invincible at 5 costs. So of course, this guy's not invincible with 7 health on 5 deploy. Like, these stats are no joke. I mean, it's only the only stats at 5 deploy that are better than this are Boba Fett, right? He's a 4/7. So I think that's pretty exciting. I think you're going to be able to do a lot of early damage, being able to control board with this ability. Now, it's not like a major powerhouse of an ability, but again, specifically with like the Tarkin Town enabling, it does let you control the board, and then you'll be able to more easily target that damage later. So those are kind of where my head's at. It's Tarkin Town and it's Force stuff. I think you can do that together as well. So like a red, yellow Force deck. There's some decent Force units, especially there's going to be one we're going to talk about later, a new yellow Force unit that's very powerful. I'm pretty excited for playing with this. And like one other thing I thought about is the new legendary that we talked about last preview. Now there are 2 of us. So Quinlan's a very sturdy deploy at 5 cost. He's a 3/7 Force unit, so you can deploy him, and then if he's your only unit, you can go bring out a 7 cost Force unit like Mace Windu. That turn he can come in, ambush at 5 cost. That seems really powerful. I think, of course, if we see other 7 costs, I mean, you can do that with Luke if you're doing yellow-blue with Quinlan. There's no 7 cost Force yellow unit as of yet, but there are some other good cards like Plo Koon at 5 cost, so if we get like a 2 cost Force unit, we may be able to cheat him out. So I think this is pretty exciting, and we're going to get a pretty good Force package in yellow this set, it appears, so definitely looking to brew with this. And the other new leader is Wookie Tambour. He is a green villainy leader, also a 5-cost deploy, which is really nice. I think 5 cost is an important cost for a deploy. He has an action on the front side that says, exhaust. If a friendly unit was defeated this phase, give a unit +2/+2 for this phase. And then his deploy, again, is 5. He's a 3/6 Separatist official, and it says, on attack, if a friendly unit was defeated this phase, you may give another unit +2/+2 for this phase. So +2/+2 is a lot. Now, the restriction here isn't easy, but I think specifically with exploit, it's going to be a little easier to trigger this. You're going to be able to maybe exploit something out, then use this ability, buff something else. It is a little action intensive for sure, because this isn't an automatic response. You have to actually take an action to buff another unit. It means that you may get interacted with by your opponent, but I think the +2/+2 is really big, whereas the other exploit decks like Newt and Dooku look to me that you want to be exploiting to kind of generate combo and go big, maybe more controlling. This looks to me like the aggro leader for exploit, and we have seen a decent amount of aggro cards in exploit. So that, like, the first thing I would look here is like the exploit rush deck. I think specifically in red, green, that's where it's going to be powerful. +2/+2 is no joke for free. That is a lot of potential damage that you can throw out. You can turn your 1/1 droids into 3/3s. They can go in, deal 3 to base. They can go in and kill a unit. That's going to be pretty important, I think, overall. So Watt looks pretty strong to me for sure. Of course, it's going to depend on the pieces around him, but as far like I've seen a lot of exploit cards that make me think, well, they're definitely building towards some kind of aggro deck and exploit, but I didn't see like how that was going to be enabled, and now I'm starting to put the pieces together with this leader. All right, so on to the cards. This is Wolfpack Escort. It's a 1-cost Cunning Heroism space unit. It's a 2/1 Republic Vehicle Fighter. It says when played, you may return a friendly non-leader, non-vehicle unit to its owner's hand. So you know it rescues something that's about to die. You can return it to your hand. Something that has a good when played, you can return it to your hand. It's cool. I mean, it's optional, right? So that's upside. I don't love the stats on it, but 1 cost 2/1 in space is not like embarrassing. I think as far as like an aggressive deck that maybe needs to like reuse some units early on, you could get some upside from this. It's nothing flashy, but it's definitely not a bad card. Next, we got Luminar Unduli. This is a 7-cost Heroism Vigilance unit. It is a 4/9 Force Jedi Republic. Has Coordinate, gains Grit, and says when played, choose a base, heal 1 damage from it for each unit you control. So this is like your top end for a big Coordinate deck. You have a lot of units. This comes in, it heals you a bunch. Turns on Grit, which is like, honestly, I think this should have just had Grit. Like, I don't know why it needs Coordinate Grit. I don't think this card is very good. I mean, you have to compare this to Luke at this cost. It's not even close. Luke is so much better. At 1 more cost, you have Redemption, which does the like similar heal burst. You know, it's not terrible. Certainly, if it is easy to enable a very wide board, this can come down, heal you for 5 or something, leave behind a pretty strong body. But again, not even that impressive of a body, because it's a 4/9 when it starts. The Grit can be shut down. To even like get the damage boost, you do need to like do things. Of course, I think this is a lot better if you play it in Young Han. Then this can come in as a 6-drop. That would be a 6/7. So a 6-cost 6/7 that maybe heals you for a burst is good. If there is like a go wide version of the red blue Han deck, it would look nothing like it looks right now if that was the case. But the same way Chewbacca is much better in that deck because he comes in as an actual threat. I think Luminara, if the Coordinate Grit part of it was on, if you were always healing for a big burst when it came into play, then that might be a place that could be interesting with this card. All right, next is Self-Destruct. It's a 2-cost aggression villainy event. It says defeat a friendly unit if you do deal 4 damage to a unit. I like it. I mean, 4 damage for 2 is really good. Of course, you compare that to open fire, cost 1 less. Now you have to blow up one of your own units. So we'll see if we can get enough droids so we can throw them at people for 4 damage. So far, it looks like it's not too hard to enable that kind of stuff. Certainly in a go wide droidy deck where you have like units that die into more units, having this in your back pocket to do like removal, like aggressive decks need removal too. They need to blow up sentinels. They need to like win races. So Self-Destruct looks to me in like the similar vein that like Force Choke filled, where like just a very efficient removal, even though it was like not good card advantage, right? Force Choke makes them draw. In this case, you're kind of like blowing up one of your own cards, or like you're blowing up half a card if it's a droid or something. But it looks to me like it'll be certainly serviceable in decks that can enable it. All right, next is Chancellor Palpatine. This is a new legendary. It is a 4-cost, a double cunning unit. It is a 2/6 Republic official. It says each token unit you create enters play ready, and it says on attack, if a unit left play this phase, create a clone trooper token. Okay, there's a lot to parse here. There's definitely a ton of upside to this card as like a token generator. It is a 2/6, so 6 health at 4 cost is pretty sturdy. 2 attack is kind of bad, but the idea here isn't that he's what's winning you races, it's that he's generating you card advantage. When he attacks, him being able to make a potentially a ready 2/2, right? That's what the clone troopers are, is pretty strong. Of course, the on attack is conditional. You need something to get removed first. So, you know, you're playing double yellow, so maybe you go Palpatine, then next turn you like Cantina Bounce or something. Then you attack with Palpatine, right? Now you've made a 2/2 that's ready. You go attack with your 2/2, right? You're able to control the board a little bit. Maybe Palpatine's probably not dying because you Cantina Bounce or whatever might have killed Palpatine. And Palpatine's also very, very durable in terms of like dodging most of the removals, like Takedown and Fell the Dragon, even Power of the Dark Side. Since ideally you're maybe going into like a wide double yellow deck. So as far as like control decks trying to interact with this card, that could be rough. Most units in the early stages aren't going to be able to deal 6 damage to this very efficiently. If you're able to like get that first droid, and that droid trooper, and that trooper can then help you control the board even further, so Palpatine's even further protected, that's when you can like really go off. And then next turn you get another one, and like once you get in like a couple attacks with this guy and you've made 2 clones, like that's really going off. Like you're getting so much value. There is a fail case on this card. He is not a very powerful unit on his own. He does require the setup, right? So double yellow has the setup cards, Cunning, Cantina Bounce, or Waylay, whatever you're going to do to like remove and stall your opponent, but it's not always going to work. So there is like a floor to this card that's not very good because he's just not a very well statted in terms of like aggression. The first place you would look in double yellow would always be like, okay, you go into Boba Fett because that's been the best double yellow deck. Now there's also double yellow Han. So like, does this fit in those archetypes? Probably not as currently constructed, to be honest, but certainly has some potential. And with some tweaks to that double yellow archetype, where you're able to like dig in more into like the board control aspect of it to like really make it so Chancellor Palpatine stay strong. And then if we see any other yellow cards or double yellow cards that create clones, because his static ability that makes them all enter play doesn't only apply to the ones he makes when he attacks. It's any other tokens you'd be creating. Even droids would come in ready. So there's a lot of upside to this card. It's a really cool build around. I'm not certain the power level will like always work out. No guarantee that this is good enough just because of the floor being pretty low, but of course it's a high ceiling card. So, and it's a pretty exciting legendary in general. All right, next is Anakins Interceptor. It's a 2-cost heroism aggression space unit. It's a 2/3 with the Jedi Republic vehicle fighter trait. So Jedi is an interesting trait to have on a space unit, of course. It says while your base has 15 or more damage on it, this unit gets +2/+0. So it's a 4/3 if you've taken a lot of damage. Obviously 4/3 for 2 is awesome. 2/3 for 2, you know, that's X-Wing. It's a card that sees play sometimes. So this is probably better, although, you know, it's not a rebel traded card. So a lot of the power on X-Wing was the fact that it is a rebel trait for like the buffs, right? The Fleet Lieutenant, the Alliance X Wing Leader, sorry. Of course, there's upside to this card. I think Republic traded, there's Republic synergy, so there is like the Fleet Lieutenant version, I forgot its name, but for Republic units, it's a 1/4 in green, so it can buff this unit. Jedi is an interesting trade. No, there's not much that has been a Jedi call out other than the saber. Of course, you can't put the lightsaber on this, but Jedi, you know, I'm always going to look at that that yellow legendary card. Now there are 2 of them, because although you can't get vehicles with that card, the vehicle can enable that card. So you can play this and then next turn play a 5-cost Jedi with like Plo Koon or something with that card. So this card's pretty solid. I mean, there's a lot of upside, especially later in the game, to be able to play like a 2-cost 4/3 in space if you take it a bunch of damage. So yeah, I think this fits in the like potentially playable 2-drops, of which there are more now. All right, next is Soldier of the 501st. It's a 1-cost aggression heroism unit. It's a 1/3 Republic clone trooper, and it has raid 1. So, you know, solid 1-drop. If we're going that route, coordinate, Republic, trooper, synergy stuff, this can certainly be a role player in that deck because it's sturdy, right? It attacks as a 2/3. It costs 1. That's usually going to be fine. I think for this to see play, it'll have to fit into like all that synergy package. You're going to really want that coordinate stuff. Maybe we're looking at Ahsoka because she not only buffs your units when you hit coordinate, but she herself would become a 5-cost 5/6 when you enable it. So having what like sturdy 1-drops in a deck like that, definitely be an aggressive deck, seems important. So certainly could see some play in a different style of red aggro deck than we have right now, right? It's not going to be a rebel focused deck anymore. It would be a go wide Republic clone deck. So keep an eye out. All right, next is Sandhill. This is a 6-cost cunning villainy unit. It's a 3/7 separatist official, has exploit 3, so he can cost 0 if you sack 3 units to it. It says on attack, for each friendly unit that was defeated this phase, ready a friendly resource. So that's interesting, right? Like, it doesn't actually synergize with his own exploit because he's not attacking that turn. Of course, you can ambush with him and then kind of ready the resources that you may be have spent, because like you exploited one guy and then you spent 4 on this guy and then you attack and you like ready one of those resources. But ideally, you play him and then the next turn you like exploit something else out and then you attack with Sandhill. You ready some resources. He seems okay. I mean, like, it works sort of together, but not really. Like, him having exploit actually isn't really a benefit to his on attack, because if you're exploiting him out, then you likely won't be able to exploit something out the next turn because you'll have less fodder out. So then his on attack trigger is a little less good. But he is really sturdy. He's a 3/7. So if you're even like getting him out for 4 cost, sack 1 droid to him, you got a 3/7 for 4. That is a beefy stat line at that cost. The next turn, you can probably spend some resources and do some stuff before you attack with him. He's not going to get one-shot by anything. And then he can maybe generate 1 or 2 resources back. You may be able to get like 1 more discount. Or if you're playing Boba, you're like, Sandhill gives you like a refund of 2. And then Boba gives you a refund of 2. And you're just like, instead of playing 8 resources on your Boba turn, you're playing like 10 or something. So that seems interesting. I think this card's pretty strong. I don't know. Like, this one is really hard for me to predict because there's like a lot going on, and exploit has not yet seemed to be like where I wanted. Like, yellow has not been where I'm looking to do exploit yet. It's mostly been like green blue or green red. Yellow has felt less exciting for me. I haven't seen many of like the enablers. I've seen some payoffs, but not so much of like the droid creating, although there is going to be one that we'll talk about in a little bit. And it's right here. Political Pressure is a 1-cost event in Cunning. It says choose an opponent. They may discard a random card from their hand. If they don't, create 2 battle droid tokens. So I'm normally very, very low on cards that give your opponent agency over the decisions. So something like I Am Your Father, for instance, do not like that card. Do not think that card is remotely good. There is another card that is escaping my mind right this second that also lets your opponent choose. Let the Wookiee win. Not a good card. Unfortunately, giving your opponent a choice is usually pretty bad. But I think this is about as close as you're going to get to one that like piques my interest a little bit, because both halves of these cards, I think we're just good. Like, your opponent is not going to want to discard a random card from your hand, basically ever, for 1 cost. That could nuke their game. They can nuke their turn potentially. I just don't see that being a benefit to them very often. I feel like most of the time they're just going to give you droids. Of course, not always, and that is the problem. You can't count on what this is going to do, and that can be an issue. This seems, though, to be a potentially good coordinate or exploit enabler in yellow because of the droid stuff. I think most of the time they're not going to discard a random card. I think even more so if you pair this with other discard effects, like Force Throw, Spark of Rebellion, K2, Pillage, whatever redundant discard effects that exist. Because the more you have, the less likely your opponent is going to be okay with just destroying a random card from their hand, which means that more often than not, they'll just give you the droids, and then you really need a reason to want those droids, and that's where like the exploit and coordinate stuff, like we saw Sandhill just now. I think this card is decent. I will always start low on cards that give your opponent a choice, but as far as like I'm Your Father, and Let the Wookiee Win, cards that I have 0 times ever put in a deck of mine. I think I will put this in a deck and see how it works. So it's already, in my mind, way above those others that we've seen. All right, next is Bold Resistance. It's a 3-cost aggression heroism event. It says choose up to 3 units that share the same trait. Each of those units gets +2/+0 for this phase. This looks very similar to me like Rallying Cry, the double aggression card that gave Raid 2 to all your units, except better because this +2/+0 is just better than Raid 2. Of course, Rallying Cry did it to all your units, but you know, how many times do you have more than 3 units? This is a very aggro card. It's obviously meant for like the Trooper clone go wide deck. You're hoping to be able to get like 3 cost and 6 damage out of this card. That's like the dream here. The fact that it doesn't give any health to any of the units is a problem, but if you have a lot of fodder, like these are tokens, right? 2/2 tokens that you're often getting as a benefit from some other card. They're now 4/2s. They're just gonna like go crazy. They're gonna kill things. They're gonna like hit for a ton of damage. Your opponent's like, oh, now I have to like trade into these clones so I don't die, right? This looks like a kind of decent finisher and part of the puzzle for this like coordinate clone aggro deck. Whether or not that deck's going to be better than like the Rebel red aggro decks that we've seen so far remains to be seen. But so far, I'm seeing what the puzzle is. All right, next is Private Manufacturing. This is a neutral event, cost 2. It says draw 2 cards. If you control no token units, put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this was actually revealed like a few hours after I recorded my like early brewed Dooku video, and I probably would have included this in that deck. I think it's nice to have a card like this because these exploit decks are often spending a lot of resources and cards to like create their board advantage, but they could like end up being card light because of this, because they're like playing cards kind of to create resources and then eating those cards to play something bigger. So could be emptying their hand. And 2 cost draw 2 in a deck where like most of the time that is what it is. Like you have droids, 2 cost draw 2 is good. And even in like these clone aggro decks, maybe to not run out of steam, they're gonna have a lot of clone troopers. 2 cost draw 2, also decent. The floor here is not great. 2 cost draw 2, then put 2 cards on the bottom of your deck. I mean, you're actually lost a card in that transaction because you've played one, and then you're also like just cycling 2 for 2, so you're down a card. But you know, that's an emergency case kind of situation. Of course, you're only playing this if you can reliably enable it, but I think the rate here is pretty good. All right, next is Droid Suppressor. It's a 7 cost cunning unit. It is a 4/7 separatist droid vehicle walker, has exploit 2. Says when played, exhaust an enemy ground unit. This looks like a draft exploit payoff. I don't think this is going to be good enough in constructed. All right, next is Admiral Trench. It's a 7 cost command villainy unit. It is a 5/5 separatist official. It has exploit 1 built in. It says when played, return up to 3 units that were defeated this phase from your discard pile to your hand. I like Trench a lot. It's another card that came out after I made my Dooku video, so another card that I probably would have included. He comes with the exploit 1 straight up, so he can be a 5 cost 5/5 that basically buys back whatever you use to cheat him out. But with Dooku, he can become exploit 2 because he is separatist, even bigger if you do the Dooku's on attack. But realistically, you can make this a 3 cost 5/5 that buys back both cards that you played, right? And I think that's pretty great. Like you lead with like patrolling V-Wing or one of these other like units that dies into a droid, then the next turn maybe you do something else like that. Following turn you can bam, eat a couple of those cards, get your 5/5 out, bring them back to your hand. Even better that this is in green because it means that you now have a really good overwhelming barrage target. Something that sometimes green decks struggle with, especially when their leader isn't a good overwhelming barrage target because it doesn't come out early enough or is just weak when it deploys. So being able to cheat out a really beefy stat line to make like your barrage really powerful in the next turn is nice. Trench, he's just he's just like a self-built combo, right? You eat the thing, you cheat out this guy, and then you just get back whatever you ate. That's good. And of course, late in the game, even if you're not exploiting him, he's kind of like just got Emperor's Legion built into him. So like late in the game, your opponent's super laser blast, you just play your 7-cost 5/5 and you return everything to your hand. So like, not only is this like a early game potential powerhouse where you cheat out a big body, he also is just like insurance late in the game for getting your board wiped. And I just like Trench. I think this card's pretty good. Next is Ahsoka Tano. So this is another legendary. This is a 3-cost Cunning Heroism unit. It is a 3/4 Force Jedi Republic. So it's got trifecta of traits. It says while you control fewer units than an opponent, including this unit gains ambush. So if your opponent has 1 unit and you have none and you play this, no ambush. Your opponent has to have 2 to your 0 or 3 to your 1, because Ahsoka does count herself. Then she also has an action that costs 2. It says return this unit and each upgrade on her to their owner's hands. You know, the floor here is 3/4 Force Jedi Republic. So like with no text on this card, that's a pretty high floor. Like it's a Force unit, right? So there is a benefit, especially once you get redundant enough in that department so that you can more reliably turn on your Force payoffs. Yellow has had trouble in that. It first of all, it doesn't have Force payoffs. Like you always have to pair it either with red or with blue if you wanted Force synergy stuff. Hopefully we get something in yellow that is an actual Force payoff, because we now have quite a few good Force units. We have her, Ahsoka Tano, we have Ezra, we have Plo Koon, we have Grogu if we wanted to go that way. It's a lot of ways to enable Force. Nothing to enable it for in yellow. That may be a tension there. But of course, if you can make this ambush, that's massive. 3-cost 3/4 ambush is a very powerful stat line. The action to return it to your hand, I don't expect it to come up very often, but don't sleep on it. It's sometimes useful to be able to do that. It also returns any upgrades on it, so that's cute, right? If you like Hot Shot Blaster on this card, for instance, you hit for 5, then you like know that the unit's gonna die, or you need to start refilling your hand so you can resource more. You just like pay 2, you return her to your hand, you get the Hot Shot Blaster back, you can resource that Hot Shot Blaster. You've kind of like drawn a card in a sense. I just think the package here is very good. This is gonna be a pretty sought after legendary in my opinion, just because there's a good floor here. It's a cool character. Force, you got potential ambush, you got a lot of synergies to go with, and it's just solid. Oh boy, this one's not solid. This is Jar Jar Binks. It's a 2-cost double cunning unit, 2/3 Gungan. It says on attack, deal 2 damage to a random unit or base. So this card is terrible. It's not even remotely good. It's just annoying. And I think that's like the point, right? It's Jar Jar. Just keep in mind, like this card can hit itself. It can hit your own base. I think my main gripe with it is how awful it is to ever resolve, because no matter how big, like you have to count every target, right? Let's say your opponent has 2 units, you have 2 units, there's 2 bases. Okay, all right, my units die roll 1, the other unit's 2, this base is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6. It's just awful. Like what if there's 7 things in play? What if you play this in Twin Suns and there's like 19 things in play? Like it's just a total mess. It's total chaos. The card's awful. It's not playable in terms of competitive play. So, you know, go to town if the people around you won't will tolerate having to resolve this when you play it, then sure, maybe it's kind of fun. I don't know. All right, next is Poggle the Lesser. This is a 2-cost command villainy unit. It is a 1/4 separatist official. It says when you play another unit, you may exhaust this unit. If you do, create a battle droid token. Whoa, this card's awesome. All right, lots to do here, right? It's a 2-cost 1/4, so that's pretty sturdy. It means it's very unlikely it's just going to die, which means you're usually just going to get a droid. It's a separatist. That's a good keyword to have. It means he can be free with Dooku. There's some other separatist stuff. It's an official, which means this curves really nicely into Emperor's Royal Guard, which then the Royal Guard will make a droid and protect Poggle, which means next turn you can maybe make another droid. Really feeds into that droid go wide, exploit stuff. Another card that I would have included in Dooku if I had seen it earlier. I mean, there's what's not to like here. I mean, this works pretty well in Palpatine too because of the official stuff with Emperor's Royal Guard and the fact that these droids, maybe you're not exploiting as much, but Palpatine likes units to throw at things and draw cards. So like that really helps his synergy. I think this card is great, and there is just a lot to like with potentially being able to make droids every turn until they deal with this. All right. Lastly is Morgan Elsbeth. This is actually the card I previewed. So if you want like a really deep dive on this card, check out my preview video because I broke down a lot more than I'm going to break down right now. But this is a 4-cost Vigilance Villainy unit. It's a 3/6 Force Imperial official, has Restore 1, and on attack, you may defeat another friendly unit if you do draw a card. So got really good traits, right? Official's good. This can curve after Emperor's Royal Guard. So, so far that's the only thing that cares about official, but it's worth mentioning. It's a very sturdy force unit in villainy, not something we see very often. So 3/6 stat line on your 4-cost force unit would really turn on things like Force Throw, Force Lightning, and Force Choke, whatever you want those turns after. So I like the force aspect of it. I've wanted to build villainy force decks more, but they just don't have the right unit density for it. I think this is going to help a lot. It's got a decent enough stat line for a 4-cost unit. I think that is where that threshold is. Like you can still play 4-cost units that don't like immediately do something the way like 5s and 6s you just like need a when played or a Sentinel or something, or you have to pair them with Energy Conversion Lab. At 4 you still have a little bit of wiggle room there, and this might be good enough in that wiggle room, right? The on attack, it makes use of like the droids you may be making, so in a different way, right? Instead of exploiting, if you like run out of cards or something, you can eat them for cards, right? Like it's a pseudo Palpatine on attack trigger. Restores nice. It's a little upside there. So it's a pretty big package of things. Don't know if it'll be quite good enough. I think force is like the real kicker here. Like if that's going to be good enough to like enable a really big curve with the Force Lightning and the Force Throw and stuff like that, then that'll be pretty exciting. Of course, there's the now there are 2 of us stuff, so she has really good traits to potentially cheat out a really powerful unit the turn after you play her, like a 7-cost force unit. So like Count Dooku can get cheated out with her. So yeah, lots to like. If you want even more thoughts on this, go check out my preview video. All right, that's it for now. Stay tuned for some more another time. This was an exciting week. Let me know what you think of the cards, and until next time, take care.